Today I would like to try and talk about nowhere. Now I want to talk about a philosophical and literary kind of nowhere. I want to talk about utopias. Now I do like writing or reading or thinking about dystopian fiction, the opposite of a utopia. But considering the situation we're all in now, I think it is very, very important and necessary to be able to think along utopian lines. And now, if you have never thought about utopia, the word utopia, and that's why I started with saying I want to talk about nowhere, means quite literally nowhere. That's because within the concept and the idea of utopia, the impossibility of it is already built in. The very meaning says it. This is utopia is a no place, it's nowhere. It cannot exist. Yet why is it important to be able to consider something a utopia, whatever this utopia may be? You may be considering a personal utopia where you have, like in the Islamic idea, there are 60-something virgins waiting for you. That's your personal utopia, who knows? Or you may be talking about a social utopia, a place where people are no longer suffering because they come from deprived backgrounds. Anything like that, a societal utopia, a personal utopia, a philosophical utopia, a utopia of the mind where people are free to think about whatever they have, or like all of these things together. Just imagine your ideal society and the ideal conditions for people of all creeds, colours, sexualities, or whatever to thrive. Now, because whenever you talk about it you can already hear all of these voices. I've told you already, it's an impossibility, it's no place, it's a nowhere. A utopia can by definition not exist. But that's why we have to think about it. I've been thinking about this idea of positive thought. I don't like the idea, I don't like the thought. If I hear somebody say, think positive, I imagine this rather silly thing of the power of the mind, that if only we think positively, everything will, the barren walls will bloom flowers, and everybody will be happy that we meet, and everybody will fall in love with us. And it's nonsense like that. That is usually sold you as the power of positivity and positive thought, and that's not it. But there is a certain power in being able to think positive in the right situation. And a situation like the one we find ourselves in right now, with extreme challenges, with extreme uncertainty, it's exactly the time when we have to think positively. Not only that, when we have to think utopia. Because we want to see, okay, where do we develop? How do we develop? In what direction do we develop? In what direction should we develop? Because this road to utopia, the road to nowhere, the only thing that we can do, because it is an impossibility, is we can start walking towards that. We can start heading towards nowhere. And in fact I would go so far as to say this is the only road worth walking to. And so the only reasonable and sensible power of positivity and of positive thought is that when you are faced with a great challenge, what is your personal reaction to it? Do you react in a way that makes the situation even worse, that magnifies it? And we've all done that, I'm sure, in situations that we've reacted in a way that made the situation completely worse, whether this is an inner resignation, or whether we fall into depression, or whether we get angry, or whether we just say, well, it's impossibility, we become apathetic. Or if we just try to react positively to it. And that doesn't mean that we stand there and we say, oh, this is great, oh, the house burned down, how wonderful, I always wanted a new house. This is not positive thought, this is a different kind of delusion in that sense. But a positive reaction is what sort of reaction it allows me to, or the people around me, to thrive best in that situation. And that can be a neutral sort of reaction, that can be sort of like, okay, let me take a step back. Sometimes this can be an absolutely positive decision and a positive reaction to whatever is happening. And that only for a personal thing, but also this utopian idea, this idea of nowhere, is where you start thinking about possibilities. As far as creativity goes, you want to have a blank mind for possibilities to come and to create. And there, this idea of utopia, this idea of nowhere resonates with me, because I think the strongest creative impulses come out of a mind that is completely empty. And it doesn't mean like a sort of static, flat-lined, comatose kind of mind, but one that is not engaged with its own preoccupations and with its own negative or positive reinforcements, but a mind that is capable of, allowing a thought to develop into whatever situation, into whatever direction this thought wants to develop. And one way to use this sort of positive thinking, or let me call it stoic thinking, because I kind of like this sort of positive neutrality, is that whenever you approach or go on a somewhat larger creative project, you will, as soon as you open your mouth about it, you will get all those voices telling you why it's a bad idea and what sort of problems will come. And then, if you're not discouraged by that and you continue pushing through, you will encounter usually completely different projects than what all those people warned you about. And now, to get to my point, what I mean by that is, don't bother your mind to come up with problems, because whenever you do something, the problems will come anyway. That's just the nature of it. But one way to approach it positively is to not worry about problems that you might encounter. Of course, worry about, financial, logistical or practical challenges that you meet along the way, but if you're a reasonable person, you will do that anyway. But do not listen to whatever objections somebody will have, not even whatever unreasonable objections your own mind will have. Just go on the project, think in a utopian way, what is the project that you want to achieve, and along that path, that road to nowhere, problems will come anyway. You don't have to make them up. Now, a little bit of food for thought, I hope. Tell good stories, listen to great stories, make up the best of stories, and take care.